to audience measurement. Now, this has always been a very hotly contested topic in digital out-of-home, and indeed out-of-home in general, as there's never been one true gold standard for audience measurement. And that's simply because there are so many different players and so many different formats. It's very hard to find a standardized unit of measurement that applies across all formats. Now, while there are certain industry standards and certain technology involved, and indeed many more tech players coming into the market, there's still a bit of contestation about how we standardize out-of-home measurement.
There are multiple different ways in which you can measure audiences in digital out-of-home. Likely broken down into three big buckets. So you probably have an industry standard. You can have things like cellular data, and if you're lucky enough, transactional data. On an industry standard level, it's likely that your region has an out-of-home industry body, which will have a standard tool for measuring out-of-home, both from a classic and digital point of view. These use different inputs such as road audience volumes, foot traffic volumes for shopping centres and train stations, trip attractors, so whether it's close to a point of interest like an airport, positioning to the side of a road, the distance of a site to a road, how the site's consumed, whether it's vehicular, whether it's pedestrian. So the list of attributes keeps going on and on. What this industry tools generally tend to more focus on is more of a demographic and socio-economic level when it comes to understanding the different audience segments that can exist using these tools. There is heaps of investment happening into the space to look at the impacts of the massive change and the amount of inventory from a digital out-of-home perspective to make sure that we're getting all the different environments and all the different assets and how they can be bought put into these measurement tools. Given the impacts of COVID on travel patterns, we can also use things like cellular data on an aggregated level to show audience volumes index across environments and locations from a baseline of pre-COVID levels to now to understand where audiences may be over or under indexing currently. Transactional data, as I mentioned, this is really, really robust because these data sets look at actual purchase behavior. These data sets offer segmentations beyond traditional demographics. So they incorporate biographic and behavioral segmentation data. And what this enables us to do for our clients is to give them access to more relevant audiences. So looking at things like psychographic, category, biographic audience, and consumer behavior segmentations. And these are all matched to individual panel locations. So if your region, your out-of-home suppliers within your region are lucky enough to have rich data like this, like we do in Australia and at O, you can use this level of audience data to improve efficiencies of your buyers on an average of 25%.
So if we take a look at the different types of data that are utilised in audience measurement for pDOOH, there are essentially four different categories. First up is first-party data. So membership data, sales data, footfall traffic. Then we have second-party data. So hiring a third party to perform surveys or counts of your audience. Then we have third-party data, which is things like anonymized mobile data, traffic data, pedestrian counts, and so on, handled by third parties, not the publishers themselves. And then we have the evolving tech. So there are new cameras, sensors, Wi-Fi sniffers, all sorts of different technology that are trying to advance the way we measure our audiences in out-of-home. Now, a lot of the confusion that comes from audience measurement in programmatic digital out-of-home isn't necessarily that we don't have ways to do it. There are many different metrics we can use to measure audiences, even if they're not quite standardized yet. The bigger issue that programmatic digital out-of-home has is a marketing problem. We adapted the terms of impressions and programmatic directly from the online world when we should have used different terminology, because at the end of the day, it's a different format and these metrics are measured in different ways. So we could have used terminology like impacts, reach, or contacts to define our audience, or automation, NRTB, which is near real-time bidding, which is more realistic for out-of-home, as well as trading, rather than utilizing programmatic. The reason we've had so much confusion is that we're trying to fit exactly the terminology that's used in other types of programmatic into out-of-home, when in fact they don't align because they're very, very different mediums. Out-of-home audience measurement is much more human. In out-of-home, audience measurement needs to be able to take into consideration behavioural changes in audiences. one-time visitors to certain areas or frequent visitors to certain areas? Do we have 1,000 people in front of a screen, or do we just have one or two? Is the format or environment somewhere that people will go to once, maybe a major sporting event, for example? Or is it somewhere people will frequent on a daily basis, such as a train station or maybe airports for business travel? Out-of-home audience measurement has the unique challenge compared to other formats that there is no one set audience to measure. It's ever evolving and it's ever changing, which presents many of the problems we have in standardizing a form of measurement across all formats. Now, this may be a very simplified version of the online audience journey, but just to draw a comparison, when an online ad is served, it receives an impression by the person seeing that ad. That person can then click through on the ad, make a purchase, and then a sale is made. So it's very easily defined. You've got one ad, one impression, and that can potentially lead to one purchase. It's a very sort of linear journey that people take with online advertising. And out of home simply doesn't align with this mentality, the impression, click, purchase. And that's okay because the medium is so different. It doesn't drive specific actions immediately. And we need to take that into consideration as we are standardizing audience measurement to realize that an impression online and an impression out of home will never be the same thing.